Alright, so jumping back to the slides. Okay, we start talking about another function called scanf. So scanf will allow us to actually take in input from the keyboard. Scanf is a function that takes input from the keyboard. Remember that. That is definitely a quiz question. So we're able to create these variables. We can declare them, and we can define them. But if we want to have the user enter in their own values, and we want to store those values into a variable, we can do that. We can do that with scanf. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down a little bit, and underneath this first one, I'm going to begin doing the scanf stuff. So the first thing we want to do when we're about to ask for the user to enter in something, we need to tell them, hey user, enter in something. So we'll use printf to do that. It's called prompting the user. And we'll say, user, enter in an integer. And then I like to put a colon there with a space and then close it, because that looks nice formatted when we go to do that. So now, let's say we want to store the user's input into var1. Well, we can do that by calling scanf. Scanf is a function, and it takes parameters similar to printf, but slightly different. So the similar part is it needs a string. In this case, it only needs a placeholder. The placeholder should match the type that is going to be entered in or saved into the variable. So in this case, it's an integer, so we're going to use %d. We do not need a new line for this. We can just leave it as %d, and that's it. So we can go ahead and put a comma after the string, and here is where we tell it which variable we want to store it into. So let's say we want to store the first one, or the entry, into var1. So now the user can enter in a value and have it stored into var1. But one little caveat here. We need to put an ampersand. This tells it where the address of the actual address of that variable 1. Do not worry about how that's actually working right now. That's called pointers. We'll get into that toward the end of the class. So just remember, scanf, when we need to put the thing into the placeholder, we need an ampersand before the variable name. So in order to test that out, let's print out to the screen again. The user entered, and then we need a placeholder because we're going to print the value of the variable. I'm going to throw a new line in there for formatting. I'm going to put the comma and print out variable 1. I'm going to save that, run the program, Control F5, and sometimes you'll have 2 open here. Remember to close it. Okay, user. See, it did the first part of the program. User, enter in an integer. Well, 72 is an integer. I'm going to hit enter. The user entered 72. Cool, so give that a try. Now, let's say we want to enter in a second one. Well, it's pretty easy. You can just take what you have here and copy it. I'm going to do it right after the first one, but instead of saving it into var1, I'm going to save it into var2. And then now, let's take the sum line here. I'm going to copy it and put it right after we saved both of them. And actually, I'm going to comment this out. And then now, I'm going to just simply take what I had up here for the printf and print out exactly, almost exactly. So I'm going to switch this to var1 and var1. So we can see the sum of the 2 integers that the user entered. So first thing I'm going to do is run this and see how it goes. So let's do something easy. 10 for the first one, 11 for the second one, 10 plus 11, 21. Fantastic. So let me show you exactly what's going on here. When the program first starts, it enters into the main. Checks out, okay, we have these declared. First thing we're going to do is define var1 to be 17. Then we're going to define var2 to be 13. We're going to set sum to 0. Now, we're going to add var2 and var2 together and store that value into sum. From here, we print out var2, which goes to this placeholder, plus var2, which goes to this placeholder, is equal to sum, which goes to this whole placeholder. Then the program continues on and says, user, enter in an integer. And it sits and waits until the user enters an integer. So once it's entered, that value is stored into var1. So var1 is no longer 17. It's whatever the user entered in through the keyboard. So we're redefining var1. Once again, we prompt the user to enter in an integer, and this time we store it into var2. Thus, var2 is no longer 13, it is whatever the user has entered in via the keyboard. The next thing we do is we add var1 and var2, store that into the sum, and we print it out just like we did last time, where var1 goes to this placeholder, var2 goes to this placeholder, and sum goes to this placeholder. So let's try that one more time. 32, 32, and that's 64. Great. And for this last portion here, we're going to just look at some more arithmetic operators. And so add is addition. You guys have done that. Subtraction. Multiplication. So this one's the star on the 8. If you want to multiply the two, A star B. Division. This one's on the question mark. A divided by B. And then percent is called the modulo, which is a remainder function. It gives you, let's say, 7 divided by 2. So when you do 7 divided by 2, 2 goes into 7 3 times with a remainder of 1, right? So the final answer, if you were to do 7 modulo 2, you would get the answer 1. And we can try that, which I'll do right now, actually. So at the very beginning, let's do... before we even declare anything, I'm just going to do printf %d. We're going to do 7 mod 2. So notice I escaped the percent sign with the percent sign and %d. So check this out. You don't necessarily need to save your answer into a variable if all you're going to do is print out that answer and you don't need to use it later. If you do need to use that answer later, you must save it into a variable in order to get back to it, or else you will need to recalculate it every time. But for here, for demonstration purposes, I'm going to do it directly into the printf. And all I need to do is literally 7 %, 2 for 7 mod 2. And let's see what it gives us. Let's see, percent. Okay, 7 mod 2 equals 113 plus 13. So looks like I forgot to add a new line. So I'm going to close that to put a double new line here. There it is. 7 mod 2 is equal to 1. And we can just do one more sanity check. We'll do 7 divided by 3, or 2. Now, remember, I said that the double and float types are the ones who are able to have the decimal point in the answer. So since this will be an integer, it's going to be what's called truncated. So instead of it being 3.5, it's just going to be 3. So let's give that a try. So this placeholder is with regards to this little formula or equation, and this placeholder will be this equation. Okay. So 7 mod 2 is 1. 7 divided by 2 is equal to, it's actually 3.5, but since it's an integer and can't do decimal places, it's going to be 3 only.